Hello everybody, I'm Anthony Dennis. The name of this slideshow is Dynamic Solutions. It's going to give some insight how you can work with special ed students from mild to moderate, moderate to severe. I'm going to take you into the classroom, and I'm hopefully that anybody who teaches any special education or anybody who works with special education children can use this information. This is accumulated over the last 10 years while working in SPED. Number one, the classroom preparedness. Special education and general education, they both need to be prepared in a similar manner, and this gets confused. General education right now is going to have a percentage of children who attend classes with ADHD and some minor or mild spectrum disorders, and they may not be identified right away. And so the way we prepare our classrooms and set them up makes a huge difference to not present any antecedents or triggers for those children. And so people think there's a difference between special education classrooms and general education classrooms. Not so much anymore, and probably a lot less in the future. So we'll go through them one at a time on how I do this. So when I go into a class, I make sure that the teacher has line of sight to all children that there may be a concern about. Sometimes the teacher has the tendency to put the child in the back of the class as not to maybe let that child be a distraction to the other children. This may be a mistake depending on the child's behaviors and needs. And so line of sight, if a teacher cannot see the children, there can be a problem. Usually I see this more in the general ed setting than the special ed, but it happens still in special ed as well. The way a teacher sets up a schedule for a class is very important. And if you're a parent, you love to see the schedule in advance. You want to know, are they sending the child home amped up, revved up? Are they what are they doing the most important subjects in the beginning of the class? The whole 9 yards. For myself, what I like to do is after a recess or lunch, a high energy activity, I love to bring them into the class, turn the lights off, take a couple minutes, wind them back down, go into a soft or quiet lesson plan, reading, did a work form, anything that can be done quietly, and that will bring the energy of the room back down. And when you're doing art projects and any activities that are high energy, do them right before you go out to recess. Let them take that energy outside after, and that definitely makes a huge difference in the classroom, and it should be tried. I've seen it work, and I'm a really big fan of this. This really calms a lot of the high ADHD kids down. Safety issues. All classrooms are not prepared for safety issues, and so what happens is children who may have behavioral issues can grab knives or scissors or whatever may be laying around. They may be sitting next to a child who triggers them and maybe grab a chair and hit them. And you see some very things that aren't normal or common, but they're becoming more common. So you need to prepare your classroom where objects that can be used as weapons are out of place. Children who would use those objects as weapons aren't sitting next to them, no temptation. So the safety issues, they're there, they are concerns. Each class will be different, has to be arranged differently, checked differently due to the amount of enrollment. And also you need to know, with safety also you need to know if a child has any medical issues or diabetes, seizures, G-tube feedings, anything to that nature. So you must be aware of each individual child's needs. EpiPens are needed sometimes for severe allergies, anaphylactic shock. And so if you have those, you need to know where they're at. You need to know if they're kept. You need to know the dates on them, all of it. The way that desks and seats are arranged, wow, it really can make a huge difference. A lot of the younger classrooms in the K and the first, second grade, they like to cluster their desks together. This is probably a fun idea, but it becomes a little bit of a trigger or antecedent for kids who have ADHD. they'll always be looking around. They're always going to be looking at their classmates, and they're always going to be looking for something to grab or something to do. So it's kind of you need to play with the seat arrangements. I've never been a fan of cluster or U-shaped classrooms. They seem to have visual stimulation, just a whole lot going on. Walls, blackboard. So we have to keep those probably not cluttered. A lot of teachers like to decorate and have everything 100% all pretty. You walk in the room, look what I have. There's some science behind keeping it a little bit dull for the moderate to severe kids and for the ADHD kids who may not appear to be on the spectrum, but any certain colors or things hanging from walls could be a distraction and could actually be a trigger of sorts. So you really need to start with the walls and your blackboard a little less clustered. A clean schedule would be nice. A calendar maybe. But as far as all the arts and crafts stuff, that should really be as the year develops. It should definitely not be in the beginning of the year, in my opinion. Although that will not be a favorable opinion with a lot of teachers setting up their classrooms, especially in general ed. Okay, so now the classroom's set up, you have line of sight, you know what kids are coming in. A lot of the teachers that I've been working with in general ed, so I'm called in specifically to work with children with behavioral issues, not necessarily on the spectrum yet or identified yet, but a lot of it is setting the tone from the very first day. Teachers want to be more friendly now than when I was a kid, and they tend to want to be buddy-buddy with the kids a little bit from day one, and I think that that is a mistake. I think from the very first second that a class comes in and sits down, they need to be addressed in a serious manner with high expectations and need to be stern and strict even to a certain point. You can always become their friends later. It is easier to be nicer later. It sounds mean, but it is not mean at all, because then it sets the tone and the pace for the class. This is accepted, this is not accepted. We do not want you getting up, running outside, and dancing in the middle of the schoolyard. That's not accepted. We do not tolerate it. It also sets a precedence for the parents of those students to know this is not accepted. We do not want your child doing X. So as long as you understand, we are not condoning these actions. To help with those expectations and to set it in place, you got to really know the child's that if they have an IEP, you got to know their personalities. You got to know where to place them, and we talked about that a little bit earlier. But you got to know everything about that child and how to curb any bad behaviors that may be coming. There's a whole science behind it, and it's not really going to be presented here so much, maybe in the next presentation. But you have to know, and if you're a teacher, you really should study IEPs. You should talk to previous teachers. You should talk to parents. You should know everything you can know about a child who may pose a little bit of a distraction for your class or a behavioral issue. And again, we're going to arrange the seats carefully. I can't put enough emphasis on that. Do not put a child who has behavioral issues next to a child they do not like. You will get a fist fight. You will get distractions. You will get arguments. Don't do that. Feel free to be flexible. Change the seating if it does not work. A lot of teachers do not do that right away. They keep waiting and waiting and waiting. If it's not working, move them. And then we make the schedule that raises and lower energies at the appropriate times. I love that tool. That really does work. And you can use visual charts when they come in. You can make them touch a visual quiet time for 1 minute. And for a couple minutes out of the day, you're not going to miss any valuable curriculum time. Matter of fact, you're going to enhance the way you do teach after, because they're going to be more attentive during the next hour's instructions or whatever. Teachers need to know about developmentally appropriate practice, okay? Or I used to call it differentiated instructions. Some schools call them inclusion. You have to be able to understand every child where they're at academically. Curriculum-wise, you got to know a little bit about their diversity as well, not to offend. But in the end, we got to know how to teach each child individually in a classroom setting. This is very hard, and this does not get done on a regular basis in general ed or special ed. A lot of clustered teaching, a lot of 7 or 8 kids sitting there trying to learn a math lesson that only 2 can learn. I think we needed to be really more flexible with how we set up our instruction and what instruction that we are giving to these children as well. You could spend a year and a half trying to teach algebra to a child who may never learn it or is not ready to learn it. And those are 2 different things, but there's still something you have to deal with. If a child is not ready to learn a subject, you can actually probably do more damage trying to instruct it than not, okay? So that's pretty important, actually. So we stay flexible. Okay, staffing requirements. This is one of the biggest pet peeves that every teacher has, general ed and other. They're understaffed. It's a true statement. There are more kids with needs who are not getting their needs met because of staffing requirements, and teachers deal with a classroom of 30, unless you're in a a class with 20 kids. Some K-3 programs are running 20 still, but they can do a class of 30, 32, and if you have 4 or 5 children who are behaving with ADHD-like symptoms and behaving poorly, and there's behavioral issues, and you're by yourself, you get overwhelmed. And so general ed is a little different from special ed because they kind of don't like it at all. Nobody likes it, but they expect that they should have got the help, whereas special ed is used to getting little to no help and getting more kids thrown into their classroom, which really is what is going on in at least California, at least in the San Mateo County and San Francisco area region, if not the rest of the state. I'd be surprised if those numbers are different anywhere else. But if you ran a poll, most teachers would find that they believe that they're understaffed. Okay, and a lot of the time it's true. I can't even argue that point. It really is. Find each staff member's strength and utilize. So the staff you do have needs to understand what they're doing and who they're working with. Some of the staff may transfer from other jobs like cafeteria or clerk typist or just different areas of classified, and that they may not quite understand the children that they're going to be working with, or really even a lot of the concept of special ed to begin with. And sometimes having a newbie staff member come in could actually take months away from the work accomplished. They could be doing things wrong, going against what your behavioral plan is or educational plan is. They can use the wrong verbiage. They can actually be antecedents, which happens all the time. So for the next one, a lot of antecedents. A lot of the times the teachers and the staff are triggers for the children. Using inappropriate words or touching kids who don't want to be touched, on the shoulder or whatever, and not in an inappropriate way, but kids with disabilities have sensitivity and sensory perception disorder a lot of the time, and they just don't want to be messed with. So the training, I skipped number 2, we're going to go back. Training in all staff spectrum and other disabilities. Okay, well, there's such a wide variety right now on the spectrum. It used to be otherwise not otherwise known as, or non-specific or whatever. But knowing what something looks like, knowing that autism has certain traits, and you look for them. Knowing that Asperger's has certain traits, you look for them. It helps you know how you want to work with a child. A lot of the staff just is not trained in it. So again, knowing what you're getting into is important. I don't believe a lot of admin pays close attention to this one, especially when people transfer over to work in the job. And I think the unions may have too much control over this, because a bad fit is a bad fit. It doesn't mean they're a bad person, but if they do not work well with special ed children, in general ed or in special ed, then they should not be working with those children. It is a detriment to those children. So look, the numbers are about 15% of children enrolled have some kind of identified needs. That number can change from 12%. There's an attrition rate at the end, so the kids in 8th grade now, there was less of them, and there's more of the kids in kindergarten starting. These numbers are from 2012. They change. But I think it's safe to say around 15% of children have identified needs. Okay, uh, the general education awareness of enrolled student needs. Now, a lot of the general ed teachers are not trained specifically in special education, nor do they have the techniques to implement any individual education plans that are set for them. So they may need help, and they may need to stay in constant contact with maybe a special ed teacher, maybe any inclusion specialist from the district, a behavioral therapist from the district, or psychs from the district. But there probably is a need to help these general ed teachers out a lot more. And when, in all fairness, a teacher's been teaching for 45 years and is getting close to retirement and is seeing things that they did not see on a regular basis. And when you had one child over a period of 5 years give you a hard time, and now you have 5 children in a classroom setup right now who all have similar needs and can be behavioral issues and distractions, a lot of the general ed teachers are losing their cool, their patience, and they're getting worn down faster. So I'd like to see a little bit more support for all the staff, and I'd like to see a lot more sharing of the knowledge of the students who are in their class. It really will take a lot of the pressure off. So many times I go into a class and I just get all the background information. I meet with other teachers. I meet with the whole team. I meet with the kid. I work with the child. And then I just say, look, this is why this kid is acting like this. Here's what's going on here. Can we fix X? And it's not as simple as that. I mean, there's a lot of work involved, but you have to stay in communication. Fair and appropriate practice education, FAPE. Everybody should know this. Every parent should know this. Every teacher should actually know this. Every teacher should understand what an IEP is, the terminology. Special ed has no doubt they have to. And a lot of general ed have kids with speech in there or whatever, so they have to understand it as well. But the terminology sometimes, the services that are required, a lot of times aren't getting met. That's a whole nother problem. Children were getting OT services, are getting push-in OT services in the classroom. So instead of their 40 minutes, they're getting 40 minutes share between 3 or 4 people. Where obviously the more severe of the child may need more attention. So depending on the disability, and I see that quite a bit. Pushing in on speech or having group speech. These things are taken away from the child's advantage to be expressive and receptive. So we definitely want to watch how that's turning out. Caseloads for speech therapists and OTs they're getting very, very large, and before they weren't so big, so more individual time was allotted to each child. Now it's becoming 5 kids are in a speech session for 30 minutes, and that's on their IEP, and there's not much you can do with that. So for all the parents out there watching this and all the teachers out there watching this, somebody needs to actually see if there's any improvement in these services, and if they're working at all, and if they shouldn't be pushing. And there's a whole thing. I may even do a whole video on that. Anybody who's working with kids anywhere across the board needs to have some kind of behavioral training. It doesn't make sense not to. Yeah, you could be like the old school. I was one of them, just thrown into the severe class and bit, stabbed, and wrestled and punched and slapped. But in reality, you have to know how to respond to it in an appropriate manner. They are children. You can hurt them. You need to know how to restrain appropriately. You need to know how to de-escalate a situation. I took PROACT training. Before that, it was called PART. But any training is better than no training, I believe, as long as it's not aggressive style. It's all a reactionary training. How to subdue and calm, not how to hurt, okay? Different trainings, different styles, but in the end, understanding that the child that you're dealing with, you can harm. And that they don't mean all the time to be a behavioral issue. Sometimes it's chemically induced, and sometimes the triggers just can't be stopped. One of the big things about this across the board, from special ed to general ed, in every class and every child I work with, there is a problem with talking to a child when they have a tantrum. You do not engage at that point. Once they are gone, in a full-out blown tantrum, throwing objects, kicking on the floor, or pounding their head against the cement, banging, you do not engage. Every word you say to them is an antecedent. It is a trigger. When you think that the tantrum is over, science is showing that up to 15 minutes after the tantrum, a child can continue the tantrum. So it is not over. In other words, if you think it's over and you say, well, why the hell did you do that, Billy? And then Billy gets up and starts pounding again. You just added to that tantrum. You never let them de-escalate. The adrenaline never went down. The hormones never went into reuptake mode. Whatever the case being, I always leave them alone, and people wonder why I don't talk to them. 10 minutes after, I talk to them in a calm voice. If I think it's been 10, 15 minutes, we calm it out. Calm voice, and I redirect them. Usually back to whatever the trigger was, so they know that it can't be an escape act. If it wasn't an escape act and it was a person who was a trigger, I don't do that. So knowing how to address those issues is very important. You should know procedures and protocols. What do you do if a child throws a chair against the window? Okay, so we need to know. What do you do if a child gets up and punches a teacher in the face? A lot of people do not know what to do. There has to be a list of protocols in place and procedures. Okay, and some schools are trying to accommodate that now because they're seeing that this is happening in general ed class more than it's happening in special ed. But you just need to know, who are you calling? Who's your backup? What do you do with the other children? This is a big problem. One, you never leave the child who's having a tantrum. I heard that last year sometime, and I thought that was the dumbest thing I ever heard. They are the ones at risk as well. Yes, they may be hurting another child, so let's clear the area. But you never leave a child tantruming alone in a room. You never do that. Self-abusive behavior really can send a child to the hospital at times, and leaving objects, and you never know what's in a room. You never know what a child can do. That's not your charge. Your charge is to know what that child's going to do. I'm not asking anybody to put themselves in danger, but you need to know, in the event, how to handle an escalation of a behavioral issue. Alright, and on the last page what we have here really is somebody has to advocate for the child. Working in a school environment, having been in the classroom, having contracted out, having been a behavioral therapist in the class, having been an independent contractor, somebody has to advocate for a child. If the parent doesn't do it for whatever reason, and there are a lot of reasons the parents do not advocate for their children. They do not know, they do not understand. There could be a language barrier. This happens all the time. There's fear of repercussions. Wait a minute, they're going to move my child to another district far away. They're going to take them away. There's a lot of legit reasons for people. I won't call them legit, but I'll call them reasons that seem legit, that they don't really advocate fully for a child. But a teacher needs to understand that they're in special ed, so this is where the loyalty splits between special ed, teachers, school staff, and children. It seems to me that a lot of the IEPs written are just to appease parents, maybe not so much to do any work, and a lot of them are written to appease staff. We don't want to spend money. We don't want to guarantee services. I just think that there's a whole situation where most teachers don't know what team they're on. They think they're doing good for the whole of the class, but in the end, their loyalties seem to be lying with the school district that pays them and sets their procedures and goals. But what is legal and what the law requires is that a child gets the needs and services that they need. And I just think that there has to be some consideration from that. That's a whole nother video. And I can't go too deeper into that. Okay, work with the whole team. This never happens. Usually, most of the time when I come in there, I get the whole team together. The whole team is OT, speech, paras, any BTs that may be on board, teachers, general ed teachers, sped teachers, principals, secretary. Everybody needs to know what a child's weaknesses are and their strengths are. Everybody needs to know when a child's going to have a bad day. Everybody needs to communicate. If the secretary knows that the child just lost a member of the family and that child is a behavioral issue and the whole team doesn't get that message, well, the whole day is going to be a waste. The child's going to be really upset, could have tantrums, could be defiant, could be crying, could be appear sleepy, tired. There's all kinds of reasons. So without sharing information that is known, and that this never happens, it's very rare. And there's something about keeping the child's privacy. I understand that. But when you got a child who has an IEP or has behavioral issues or is going to get assessed for an IEP, the communication lines need to stay open because the lack of communication is causing harm to that child. Children all the time go to school hungry, and teachers wonder why they're not doing well, yet that they know that they didn't eat breakfast because they've been asked. So there's a million things that need to be communicated, and there's some easy steps to fix a lot of the problems that they may come to school with, and there's some steps you can never fix. They're homebound problems that need to be fixed in the home. And in the same spirit of sharing and working with the team, all the records that you take, they're very important. The information, the details, they're relevant. From the smallest detail to the biggest detail. The charts, the running records, anecdotal records. Parents at home need to be taking records. Everything that the parent gives me, I look at it with, so much value. I need that information. And then when it correlates with this teacher's information, I say, well, that same thing's going on at home. And they'll be like, well, how do you know that? Because I asked. Bottom line is because I asked. And sometimes that sharing information can be the difference in a behavioral plan, in a whole plan that's put in place for a child. So that's part of the using the charts effectively when you do use them. If you're going to use running records, if you're going to use anecdotal, if you're going to use ABC charts, use them effectively. Every single time that child has a tantrum, write why. Every time a child has a behavioral issue, write why. Write exactly what happened before. Write the time of the day. Write the date. Write what the weather outside. Whatever little knickknacks you can think of that may have triggered it. Sometimes rain triggers kids. Sometimes sun triggers kids. Sometimes 10:30 in the morning triggers kids. We don't know why. It could be just a timing issue. They could have ate at 5 and their stomach's getting heavy. Or maybe they want to eat again. I don't know. Okay? So we need to share that information with all kids. Know the parents' rights, because the parents need to know that a lot of parents do not know their rights. So they may come to you, and it's your duty and it's your responsibility to explain their rights to them. Whether you think it's somebody else's or not, it's not. It's yours. You need to know the parents' rights and explain those rights to them if they ask. Pushing them on to somebody else, that's not the answer. Okay? So, in the end, on this whole train of thought is, you know who you're working for. You're working for the child first. Otherwise, you wouldn't be in education. It's a hard thing to say. I know you want your money. I know everybody works for it. But anybody who works in education, this is not just for teachers. This is for behavioral therapists. This is for OTs. This is for paras. I never had this. This is still not out. This video is still not available to me 10 years later. Nobody talks about these things, and these are easy tools to at least implement, to at least try to implement. Okay, this is not how you work one-on-one with a child who has autism. This is not that. This is not that video. That video is something else. I have a program in place called Dynamic Solutions, and it shows how to work one-on-one with nonverbal, severely autistic kids, and it shows some great advancements that are being made using that system. I created it, been using it successfully for years. So I'll probably get that out to you guys, whoever wants to learn that as well. But this is just for the beginning part. You get the child, and then you get the child set, and then you teach them. And so for everybody who watches this, I hope you learned something. If you have any questions, I'll probably attach my email to this. You email me. Special ed needs a lot of consideration going forward in the United States and in California, and we need to decide what route we're taking. I predict in the next 7 or 8 years you'll probably be at a 25% special ed classrooms. So we'll go from there, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks.